Yep.
Cool. All right. Today is Wednesday, November 7th. Is that right?
Sounds
Yes.
right.
Okay.
Yes. Day after the last.
Yes. And this is the Kubernetes CSI implementation meeting. We're going to jump right into 112 status. Let's see. Here we go. So we have the snapshot E2E tests.
Yeah, so I think my coworker has addressed the comments. I think it just now has base issues that he needs to rebase. But he did address your comments, Michelle.
Okay, cool. I'll take another look at it today.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see. The topology test, Cheng is not here. We will have to get an update later. For the pod workload tests, I think we just need Saad to approve it.
Okay, I'll take a look at that.
And it should be good to go.
I think I approved it this morning.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks. All right. And I think that's all that's remaining for 112 stuff. So we're making good progress there. Awesome. Going to 113 tasks. We have moving the volume attachment and persistent volume source objects to V1. Looks like Jordan finally had some time to take a look at it, and he made quite a few comments. So we'll have to work on fixing those and addressing them. I think judging by his comments, there's nothing like there. It's mostly mechanical comments. I think there's nothing that I can see that is like a huge design change or anything like that.
Okay.
Next is the kubelet device plugin registration to GA.
Yes, I'm here. So I contacted Vish, both on the PR and then on Slack. I didn't get a response, but on the PR itself, he seemed to think that the PR was going from alpha to GA, so I clarified that for him, and he also mentioned that why we're not taking like around a year to do this, to make sure that the API is not going to change anytime soon. So I replied to him on the PR, and then I pinged them on Slack. I think yesterday. I hadn't heard from him since. So I'll continue to push for it and
Point out that it's a blocker
team.
for CSI GA, and that it's been 3 quarters. So
yes, and that's part of my response.
Okay.
That's what I told him on the PR.
Okay.
Cool. Sounds good.
We'll also Saad and I can try to sync up with him in person too.
Okay, if you can, please. Thank you.
Yep. Let me do that. All right. Next is the CRD installation mechanism.
So this has been merged. Should be good to go.
Okay. It looks like there might actually be some failures because of this
Okay.
for our alpha tests.
Okay.
Actually, yeah. Actually, we can skip up and go to it. I think someone added this. Oh, Patrick, yeah. So I think when Patrick was trying to test with all the feature gates on, something was failing. And at the same time, our alpha test grid is also
not happy.
Yeah, it's not happy.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll have to take a look at that and
Okay.
see what's
I can take
going
a look at
on.
those.
Awesome. Next up is the external provisioner topology support. I think Deep just posted a PR out here, so I guess we should review this. Chang, would you be able to help review this?
Yeah, certainly.
Awesome. So hopefully that can go in soon. The next item we need to move to beta is the E2E test. Chang, do you have an update on this?
Yeah, I'm hoping to push out an initial PR today. It's going to, part of it is going to depend on the refactoring to make the entry and CSI test shareable.
Okay.
So I have to rebase off of that, but I definitely want to have a first version out by today.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, and I think that refactoring one that adds all the entry tests to CSI plugins, I'm hoping that can go in today as well.
Oh, cool.
Awesome. All right. Next is moving the CSI node info objects from alpha to beta. Last update was that David's changes for migration might change some of this. Do you know if we were able to resolve these conflicts?
Yeah, I'm actually still waiting for this PR to get merged so I can rebase mine.
Okay.
Mhm.
Let's look at the status on this. Okay, it looks like we should get approval from API, the API machinery team, and then we'll just need some approvals for node restriction, I guess. Okay. Judging by this, it looks like we're really close and we should be able to get this in either today or tomorrow. All right. And next is moving the CSI spec to 1.0.
So this is on track. We have 5 P0s, or maybe it's 4.
5 P4.
Yeah, it's either 4 or 5, I forget. And they're all assigned. We continue to meet every day to move those along. I'm not anticipating any major issues for this other than making sure people get their PRs out. One thing I wanted to clarify, since I have Luis on the line, we're going to modify the wording for target path to say that for both block and file, the CO is responsible for creating target path and deleting the target path. For file, it's going to be a directory, empty directory, and for block, it will be an empty file. Luis, that seems to work for your block case, yes?
Oh, I was on mute, on double mute. Yes, that works perfectly, and I have tested it, and it's
Awesome.
I look forward to it.
So the 2 bugs that you have open, you had 3 open. One was a issue to track the other 2. I'm going to close the other 2, and I'm going to use the primary one as a follow-up to clean up the spec to say this is what the CO should do.
Saad, we also have Masaki on attending, I think.
Okay.
So I wanted to extend them the same question that you just asked about implementing the block. Masaki, is that okay with you? What Saad just mentioned?
Yeah, as far as I tested, it's working fine. So.
Okay, that's great.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. That unblocks us then.
Awesome. Thanks.
Get it on blood test? Oh, that's funny.
Ha ha ha. Next is moving the RBAC role definitions to the external repos. Let's see, Patrick is not here. I think he has most of the PRs out and they have merged. I think the last thing is to update the docs. So I can go ahead and help review that, and I think this should be done soon. Other than that, Patrick's also trying to debug this flaky host path E2E test. I think on the latest updates, we suspect there's some race condition going on with unmounting and maybe the attach-detach controllers. So I've asked Hemant if he can help debug this a little bit, since Hemant is pretty familiar with this area. Next is splitting up the driver registrar into 2 different repos.
Oh, I didn't split it up into 2 different repos. I split it up into different programs in the same repo.
Well, I guess that's a first step.
Yeah. They both have dependency on package, a library in the same package in that repo. Do we really want to do that? Or I just made 2 output commands.
I see. Let's review this first, splitting it up into 2 different programs, because we'll want to do that regardless. And once we review it, we can see if it's worth it to split it up into 2 different repos.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Okay, and this is the PR, this pull 70?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I can help review this. And my buttons. Okay, awesome. Thank you for working on that.
Just so you know, also
it
creates 2 containers also.
Okay. Let's see. Last item here is to improve documentation. Do we have any? Do we know of any other doc changes we need to update?
I think we're going to need to revisit this after code freeze. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, going back all the way to the top. All right, so we talked about this CRD issue. Next is the read-only issues. So I had a PR out to fix the read-only tests. I think the conclusion was we basically are not going to try to fix the underlying read-only issue with the CSI mounts, because in the end, the CRI is going to already take care of making sure things are read-only in the container. So that PR has merged, and then the other read-only thing left that's remaining is to handle the attach case.
So I took another look at this and I whittled my proposal down to say pretty much for the mount, we're going to leave it as is. Mount is controlled by 2 switches and both of them are going to remain in effect. And then for the attach, we're going to add in some additional controls in the external provisioner to make it easier to control that. Specifically a new storage class parameter, as well as automatically set it based on the access mode. So if somebody doesn't specify it via the storage class parameter, So if there is no storage class parameter specified, then we can look at the access mode for the PVC. And if there's only one access mode and that access mode is read-only many, then we can automatically set that PV to read-only. This does not address the issue that a PV is immutable once it's created. So if somebody wants to change the read-only attached state, they have to nuke that PV and recreate it. That issue exists today for all the existing volumes. It's not ideal, but I think it's the most workable solution that doesn't require major surgery.
Is it possible to use the same flag to control both mount and attach?
It is, but we don't do that for any other volume plugin, and it could lead to more confusion, and it's more work, and it requires work on the Kubernetes side, including in the API. We'd have to add a new flag to the volume attachment object.
Okay.
So given that, I'd say let's just leave it as is.
Okay. So for like something like for GCE PD, where we have read-only many, is that only controlled by the pv.spec.gcepd.read-only flag?
Read-only many is controlled. So the attach is controlled by number 3, which is pv.read-only, yes.
Okay.
So when the volume is provisioned, the PV object specifies how the attach happens. Currently, like it's broken.
So currently, like
plugins.
dynamic provisioning, well, I guess dynamic provisioning of a read-only volume doesn't really make sense.
Yeah.
Right? Like you would provision a blank volume and immediately mount it read-only.
Right.
And it has
And
no data on it.
Volume, like you can always set the field to whatever you want. So
is this something that we really need to like
improve
to look at? Because it seems like just the general use case of dynamic provisioning doesn't really fit with read-only.
Well, you may want to clone a read-only volume. So let's say you have a data set that you want to create a copy of it for some reason.
I guess for like, once we support provisioning from a data source, then that could make sense. But I guess right now, given the current code where like we don't have a provision from data source, then this read-only thing doesn't really make sense.
Yeah. So actually, based on what you mentioned, I think this proposal doesn't even make sense because if you have a volume that's going to be dynamically provisioned, ostensibly it's empty, other than the data source thing, which we don't support.
Yet, but will.
So I guess we could add this preemptively in anticipation of that.
Yeah, I would. Maybe, well, I think we should think about it a little bit more, but maybe we don't need to do this for 113.
Agreed. I'll go ahead and remove the 113 milestone from this, and then we can look into it afterwards.
Okay.
I don't think any of this will be backwards compatibility breaking changes. They're just allowing you to configure an existing flag, and we're not changing any of those flags.
Just FYI, on the driver registrar change that I have up there that we just discussed, it will be breaking because we will no longer have a single driver registrar container anymore. We'll have two.
This is why I want it in 1.0. So we do it the right way in 1.0, and then thereafter it's smooth sailing.
Perfect. Just
There's going to be a lot of breaking changes in 1.0. We need to make sure we document all of them.
Perfect.
I have a question. Why is that a breaking change? We have 2 entries, right? We have to have 2 entries right now, except we're just pointing to the same binary.
Yeah,
one entry control.
We don't have one binary anymore. We have 2 binaries with 2 different containers, and one's One's called the driver node registrar, and one's called the driver queue registrar.
I guess to Vlad's point, like the existing drivers aren't going to stop working. It's just that new drivers will need to make sure they package themselves properly. With
Like if you want to
Right.
upgrade to the latest images.
Yeah.
Yeah, that image.
Right.
Let me try to say it another way. The image called driver registrar will not be updated anymore.
Right.
It'll just sit there.
Makes
Oh.
sense.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But the old registry will still work if you update the other containers to newer version?
Yes. If you keep the driver registrar container to the current version, it will continue to work.
Yes,
It's
correct.
just there won't be any new versions cut after this.
Yep.
Exactly. It's deprecated. You can think
Okay.
about it that way.
Okay.
All right.
I'd really like to do the repo renaming. Everything else that we have is one product per repo. So if we could do that at the end, it'll make things a lot simpler. So people
It's just-
probably understand that these are two separate things.
Yes, it's just that they share the same package library. So we just have to, I would have to have a third repo where they have common code.
What's the common code that's shared between them?
It's, you know, I haven't 100% looked to make sure that they both looked at it, but I know there's a package controller, package like setup in driver registrar.
Okay, that might be worth taking a look at when you review this,
Okay.
Michelle.
Yeah.
I don't anticipate there to be any overlapping code.
Okay, yeah, if there isn't any overlapping, no problem.
Cool. Sounds good.
Awesome. Let's see. Next task is volume operation metrics for CSI. I think there's been some discussion going on this, so we should be able to get something out soon. Next is Luis, you have a topic on versioning.
Yes, this was brought up by Patrick a few days ago. What we have our CSI test release, which we just released at 0.30 to try to track a CSI spec -3, because that's our third version of it. One of the issues that we found was that our CSI test is actually pulled in the latest version of the CSI pb.go, which was generated, which is unversioned. It's just the latest, but it doesn't have a version like 0.4, something like that, right? And so that created some confusion when people want to use CSI test or CSI Sanity to test their 0.30 spec stuff, not their additions to 0.30, right? We have like a little limbo between 0.30 and 1.0 in CSI.
So what we need to do is, it's fine for master to track master and have breaking things going there. Whenever we cut a official release of CSI test, it must grab onto a specific version of CSI. So
Yeah.
CSI 0.3, CSI test 0.3 and 0.4 must both point to CSI 0.3.
Well, here's the situation. Between, just letting you know, there were like over 20 commits between the version we have master now and 0.30 release, the first one.
Mm-hmm.
We need to somehow manage that better. I don't know. I don't have the answer yet.
Mm-hmm.
We can take it offline. But we need something to be able to not upgrade the CSI pb.go, attach it to a certain version of CSI, but continue development in CSI test.
Can we do this with branches?
I
Don't
think
we
that's
already have
probably,
branches for different releases, 0.3, 0.2, etc.?
no, we do not.
Oh,
Not in
okay.
CSI test.
I
Because
see.
it was tracking it very direct. But I think that's probably the rest method.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Yep. Let's start cutting branches for releases and fixing them.
Okay.
So we can do this with 0.4 as an initial.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for bringing this up.
Yeah.
Next, let's see. This was from last time, and we talked about this, right?
Yes,
Passing some information.
I have some more info on that that Saad and I were able to discuss offline. And one of the things was to bring it back to the meeting was that we get information during attachment. That's great. But we want information during creation. And right now we don't have it. So I have a little patch right there. You can see the diff of what it would be to create creation. But it's kind of like the same thing, but they're called PVC instead of pod. The keys for it, PVC namespace, PVC info. So it could look something like this, and then it would add it to the parameters and then add it to create.
So sorry, I wanted to make sure I understand the use case. What are you using this information in the provisioning process for?
So it's in a couple of things. One, we mentioned about secret, which we can handle offline with using the secret information. That's no problem. The other one is something that we call ownership. We're adding ownership to resources in the storage system so that anybody that goes out of the system or tries to mount or do something to get a snapshot cannot be able to do it. And to do that, we need who owns this resource in our storage system. And normally we will grab namespace, which we do already in our inline internal driver. But in CSI, we don't have that information anymore. It's like we lose a enhancement, right?
So you would update the PVC object directly? Or what object would you manipulate?
We wouldn't manipulate any object. We just need to know who created this object so that when they mount it, we know that the mounting person is the same one that created it. And then like if snapshots come after that you're trying to create a volume from the snapshot, that you have the ability to do that. This is just internal to the storage system so that we don't get hackers or somebody going in. And because normally our storage system is like kind of separated from the control plane of the CO. And what we're trying to do is kind of have a little more integration since the CO knows what it is.
Not necessarily information that you're going to update on any object. Instead, it's information that you're going to retrieve from a PVC or from some other Kubernetes object and add that to the storage system.
That's correct. It is storage specific, so that way just like when we add pod specific information to the amount, which is great, we need that too. We need one for creation. That way we know if we can then map one-to-one during mounting. We say, this is the correct namespace. You are the right person to mount this.
I see. And your identifying information is the PVC namespace, like the...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that means you can see from the...
Oh, sorry.
You can see it right from there.
My question is does it need to be the PVC namespace, or can it just be any unique identifier?
It needs to be the namespace because from the user point of view, that's what they view as what can attach this snapshot or this volume. So
it sounds like it could backfire if we ever implement PVC transferring or anything like that.
If we do, which we haven't done yet, but
if it's implemented in the plugin and the CO then says, oh, well, now you can change the namespace on a PVC, then all of a sudden your plugin won't work anymore.
That's correct.
Could that? I was going to ask, could that information be passed via parameters in the storage class instead of being through the code?
It says that in the storage class, it is namespace. It doesn't have a namespace, right? So anybody can attach it. The whole goal is to make sure. Here's the goal, and we can discuss how to avoid the issue that Ben just brought up. But the goal is, from a user's point of view, I want to make sure that if somebody gets the volume ID of my volume, they cannot mount it in another namespace, right? So what we do is that we take the namespace into the storage system. So if you try to by hand put the PV name, sorry, the volume ID name into your pod, and you want to like mount it, you won't be able to, because it will say you're not coming from the correct location. You're not allowed to do this.
How do you verify that that second request is coming? Basically that it's not manipulated to say whatever namespace.
That hopefully we trust the CO to make sure that that request is coming from a certain namespace. So if we get the information from the CO, right?
I see. So okay.
I think for inline or entry drivers, we do have some sort of validation that makes sure that you're not jumping namespaces.
No, but if I grab the ID of a volume, the storage system doesn't understand, right?
No. I'm confirming what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Is that in current entries, at least for instance, if you trying to use a inline volume, for instance, for current entries, it makes sure that it's not, you're not trying to jump namespace by providing something different. So something like that might be needed for external drivers.
Well, so this solution here requires PVC and PV, right? The solution does not address the inline volume case.
That is true.
But I'm wondering, so like, I'm not sure how exactly, even if you had the volume ID, in order to change it, you need to be able to change the PV object, but a PV object is non-namespaced, which means it needs administrator privileges in order to modify.
No, if I had grabbed the volume ID of the store's volume itself, then I can, in the pod, I can put that volume ID, right?
You're saying, oh, but this is for inline volumes, right? Because normally if you use PVC,
Yes.
you can only reference the PVC.
That's correct. What I'm saying is that somebody created, we're both in alignment. I created a PVC on my namespace, I own it. Somebody is trying to access my data, looked somehow to get the PV name, and then got the ID, and then wants to mount the same volume I have, my volume, on their namespace.
So I think this is a more general problem that we have. We should have a pod security policy that lets you disable inline volumes instead of making the plugins work around this.
Well, let's make sure that, is this just for inline volume? Because I think this is more general. It's not just inline volume.
Well, so the problem, as I understand it, is you want to prevent some arbitrary person from coming along and saying, that volume is mine, I'm taking it, I'm using it. In the traditional PVC PV case, this is not an issue because the PV object is how you say what volume you want, and ostensibly only a cluster admin can create that object because it's non-namespace. So in the PV PVC case, it's not an issue. The problem is that in the inline case, you can directly in your pod definition say, I want to use this volume and just specify it directly inline. And there's no further checking. You have access to create your pod. And that's what Luis is trying to protect against. And instead of solving it for one plugin or having the plugin solve this, what I'm thinking is this should be a higher level, like Kubernetes level thing that we need to protect against. We have pod security policy already, which allows you to say, what are the whitelist of volume plugins that you will allow? I think it makes sense to extend pod security policy to say, I will not allow inline volumes for such and such volume plugin. And then
I think you can already do that.
That's one of the changes that it was supposed to come with inline.
Can you already do it, or is it?
I think today for entry volumes today, you can disable the volume, inline volume types?
I don't see that. I'm looking at, so I see allowed flex volumes, allowed host paths. I see usage of volume type. But as far as I can tell, it's the entire volume type, not whether it's inline or not.
No, I mean, so that type is only for inline volumes.
Oh, so we don't prevent usage of that type for PVC?
Correct.
Seems odd.
Yeah, I brought that up before too, but
Okay.
that's apparently the way it works.
Ah, okay. Well, that is exactly what we're looking for then. So maybe, Luis, can you look into that?
Yeah,
There's
please. Yeah.
basically a way to whitelist or blacklist volumes in the pod security policy. And apparently it's only whitelist or blacklist inline, not for PVC, though the documentation's not very clear about that. So it might be worth manually testing it to verify. But that might be a better answer.
Perfect.
Saad, if you look at it from a different perspective, I mean, for the inline case, there must be a password to be able to mount the specific volume under the pod, right? And it's provided as a local as a local reference, not as a secret. So basically, in this case, the password must exist in the same namespace as the volume or as the pod. So basically, that will break this possibility of attack completely, because in this case, attacker need to have a local secrets, which is difficult.
That's also true. So I think the assumption is if you don't have a password protected volume and you still want to protect it, which, is possible, you're absolutely right. It's just an additional layer of protection if you don't have some sort of password protection.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sergey, for mentioning that too.
All right, cool.
All right, let's go back. Let's
You can
see.
skip
So
that. I just put it on hold until I continue that work.
Sounds good.
Okay. Let's see. And the block stuff is going to be covered. So we got that. And I think block to beta, we're going to move to next release cycle. These items we're also going to move to after code freeze. Is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss?
So I put a note at the end of one of the blocks ones about a specific PR that wasn't getting any attention for CSI block support. This is Ben. So this is apparently that today you can't actually create a block volume through CSI because this patch hasn't merged yet. This is the provisioner bits to actually create the block volume.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, we definitely want to do this. I think right now we're mostly all focused on hitting the code freeze deadline for CSI GA.
Okay,
but
I can't.
Definitely take.
I don't see how we could even call CSI alpha quality without the ability to create block volume. So I was scratching my head.
Yeah, this seems important, but let's get it in as soon as code freeze is over for Kubernetes core. This is an external provisioner code, so I don't want to distract folks in the
different deadline. Okay.
Yep. But definitely important for 1.0.
So I know this is out of scope for the current deadline and everything else, but I'm working on the populator piece, the data source pieces, and the external provisioner. And the one thing that I wanted to see is where folks were at with the PR to add the cloning to the spec, just because I went ahead and implemented it.
So there's a PR already out for CSI trying to add cloning. I think it was Gorka who added it.
Yep. That's the one. So I approved it, and I just wanted to kind of raise it on the list to try to get it.
I think it's just under review. It probably is going to make 1.0 if there's no major concerns.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything other than wording.
Cool.
But if not, it's not a blocker for 1.0, meaning we're not going to stop 1.0 to get it in.
Right. No, understood.
Cool. Okay.
I added a section at the in the section about non-GA tasks, so we can
Perfect.
start updating stuff there.
Oh, great. Okay, cool.
All right, I got to run. I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, I think we're if there's nothing else, then we are done for this meeting. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.